In the heart of ancient Rome, where marble gleamed under the sun and empire stretched beyond imagination, there existed a stage where civilization and savagery met as one. A theater built not for art, nor for truth, but for death. The Colosseum, the crown of Roman power, a monument of mastery over man and beast alike. And within its walls, humanity was tested, unmasked, and devoured. They called it Damnatio ad Bestias, condemnation to the beasts. To be thrown alive before lions, leopards, bears, and wolves, beneath the eyes of thousands. It was a punishment, yes, but also a performance. A ritual in which Rome reminded itself that its order, its law, its empire, all stood above the chaos of flesh. The morning of such a spectacle began long before dawn. The air around the Colosseum quivered with noise, the creak of gates, the clatter of cages, the murmur of vendors hawking olives and wine. People gathered like waves upon the arena's stone shores, eager, impatient. They came not merely to watch death, but to feel it, to taste, for a brief moment, the fear they were spared. The condemned were led through corridors that smelled of iron and damp earth, their feet scraping across the sand they would soon bleed upon. Some prayed. Others were silent, their eyes wide with the strange calm of those who have already crossed the threshold of hope. For most, there was no defense, no trial worth the name. Slaves, criminals, prisoners of war, and sometimes, simply the inconvenient. The empire had many reasons to feed its beasts. When the gates of the arena opened, light poured in like fire. The crowd roared. And out they stepped, trembling, barefoot, stripped of all rank, all identity. Above them, the emperor watched from his gilded seat, surrounded by senators, courtesans, and the perfume of privilege. A signal was given. From the shadows of the underground cages came a growl that made the ground itself vibrate. The beasts, symbols of chaos, brought from the corners of Rome's vast dominion, lions from Numidia, tigers from the east, bears from the cold mountains of Europe. They emerged with the majesty of nature itself, unchained, unreasoning. The crowd gasped in awe and horror. For a moment, the illusion of Roman control faltered. The wild stared back at its masters. And then, the attack. The arena erupted in screams and dust. Blood darkened the sand. Some of the condemned tried to run. Others fell to their knees, arms raised toward the heavens that did not answer. The beasts pounced, claws flashing, jaws crushing bone. The sound was not human. It was the music of Rome's hidden heart, the part that craved spectacle, that drank fear like wine. From the stands, the people shouted, applauded, waved pieces of cloth in approval. To them, it was justice. To them, this was the proof that Rome was eternal, that the wicked were punished, that order reigned. Few paused to see the humanity of those below. Few wondered what it meant to build glory upon such cruelty. But beneath the grandeur lay something darker. For every cheer that echoed through the Colosseum, a whisper of guilt followed. The philosopher Seneca once wrote of such games, disgusted by the sight. Man is most cruel when he thinks himself civilized. Yet even his words could not stop the tide. Emperors found power in the people's bloodlust. Bread and spectacle, the ancient bargain that bound ruler and ruled. In the cold, damp pens beneath the arena, others waited their turn. The condemned were branded, chained, or dressed in mockery, some disguised as mythic villains, others as beasts themselves. Rome loved irony. If a man claimed to be divine, he might die as a god burned alive. If a woman defied her husband, she might be bound to a bull. The cruelty was not random, it was choreographed. Death as theater. Suffering as art. Sometimes, the executioners added a cruel delay. The beasts, starved for days, were released one by one, their hunger stoked by the scent of blood. A lion might circle its prey, pawing at the sand, savoring the fear that thickened the air. The condemned might stand frozen, trapped between instinct and despair. And then, with a sudden leap, the dance ended. The sand absorbed it all. Blood, sweat, tears, all became part of the same red earth. And when it was done, when the beasts were dragged away and the corpses cleared, new sand was spread over the old. The show would begin again. To the Romans, this was more than punishment, it was purification. The state cleansed itself of traitors, criminals, and enemies of order. To die before the beasts was to become part of the empire's moral ritual. Yet in truth, it revealed the fragility of Roman virtue. For what civilization needs such horror to prove its strength? Some among the crowd looked away. Others whispered prayers. But most cheered, hungry for more. Children laughed as lions tore into flesh. Women clutched their husbands, half in fear, half in thrill. The line between horror and entertainment blurred until it vanished. In later centuries, the condemned would include those who refused the old gods, the early Christians. For them, Damnatio ad Bestias became not just a punishment, but a legend. The stories speak of men and women singing hymns as the gates opened, of faces serene even as lions approached. Faith turned to defiance. Death became testimony. Imagine the scene. The sun blazing down upon the marble seats. The crowd restless, curious. The condemned pale, trembling, but resolute. A young woman clutches her child. A man raises his eyes to the sky, whispering a final prayer. Then the gate opens. The lion emerges, golden, furious, magnificent. It pauses, sniffing the air, its mane trembling like fire. The woman does not move. The child begins to cry. The lion roars, and the world holds its breath. In that moment, all of Rome, emperors, senators, soldiers, slaves, is silent. The beast leaps. And yet, within the roar, there is a silence deeper still, the silence of conscience, buried beneath centuries of spectacle. The arena becomes a mirror. Every scream reflects the power that demanded it. Every drop of blood, a reminder that empire is built not only on law and order, but on the bones of the forgotten. The crowd leaves, satisfied, entertained. But the sand remembers. By evening, the Colosseum lies quiet. The sun sets over the Tiber, painting the city in gold and crimson. The beasts sleep in their cages, bellies full. The scent of blood lingers in the air, mingling with incense from distant temples. Rome sleeps, content in its illusion of control. Yet not all are blind. In the dim light of their homes, a few speak in whispers. Is this justice? They ask. Is this greatness? But such questions are dangerous in an empire that demands silence. Better to cheer than to think. Better to obey than to feel. Years turn to decades, decades to centuries. Emperors rise and fall. The Colosseum stones crack, its seats crumble. Grass grows where lions once prowled. The cheers fade into ghosts. But the memory of Damnatio ad Bestias remains, a wound carved into the marble of history. What was once spectacle becomes symbol. The lions, long dead, live on in stories. The condemned, once nameless, are remembered in faith and legend. The empire that fed them to the beasts is gone, but its echo lingers in every society that mistakes cruelty for strength, or silence for peace. Today, we walk among the ruins, tourists with cameras, scholars with pens. We marvel at the architecture, the engineering, the might of Rome. We call it civilization. But if you listen closely, if you stand in the shadow of the Colosseum when the sun begins to fall, you might hear it still. The faint growl of a lion. The distant roar of a crowd. The whisper of the condemned. They do not ask for pity. Only remembrance. For the true power of Rome was never in its legions or its laws, but in its belief. The belief that it could command both man and nature, rule over life and death. Damnatio ad Bestias was that belief made flesh. It was the empire's dark heartbeat, pulsing beneath the marble, beneath the triumphs and temples, beneath the very idea of Rome itself. And yet, even in that darkness, there was light. The condemned who faced the beasts with courage left behind something Rome never intended, a legacy of endurance, of faith, of the indestructible human spirit. They stood as living proof that even in the jaws of the lion, the soul can remain free. So when the narrator's voice fades, when the arena empties and the dust settles, what remains is not the sound of roaring beasts, but the echo of a question: who, in truth, were the beasts? Was it the lion that killed to survive? Or the crowd that killed to be entertained? History offers no answer, only reflection. The Colosseum still stands, weathered but proud, a monument to both human genius and human cruelty. The arches reach toward the sky like the ribs of a giant skeleton, the bones of an empire that conquered the world yet could not conquer itself. Each stone holds a story. Each shadow hides a scream. And when night falls over Rome, when moonlight spills upon the broken seats and the wind sighs through the corridors, the ghosts of the condemned walk once more across the sand. Their steps are silent, but their presence endures. They are the mirror we avoid, the past we inherit, the warning we forget. Because within every age, within every empire, there are arenas still waiting, not of stone, perhaps, but of spirit. We build them in politics, in spectacle, in the quiet cruelty of indifference. We still watch as others are thrown to the beasts. Only now, the beasts have new faces. And so the story of Damnatio ad Bestias is not merely ancient. It is eternal. A reminder that civilization, without compassion, is only another kind of cage. The camera pans upward, the ruins of the Colosseum bathed in dawn light, birds circling where once the crowd cheered. The narrator's voice softens. Empires rise and fall. Power fades. Stones crumble. But the memory of those who faced the beasts endures, not as victims, but as witnesses. Witnesses to the truth that no empire can silence forever, that the heart of man is both beast and divine. Fade to black. The sound of a lion's distant roar echoes one last time. And then silence.